Will it become innate, instinct, natural reflex, impulse without variation to respond when we see others in need? When does that part of humanity's DNA finally say, I will do this because it's right, because it's reprehensible not to? When will age, race, region, or religion no longer be the deciding factors for all the pleas on late night TV? All the bloated bellies, skeletal shoulders and limbs so graphically portrayed, those piteous scenes of starving children who must, at best, wait until photographers capture their shots before they can eat. The point seems to have been missed, or perhaps it's more one of marketing choice, that starving children standing, squatting, crying make more evocative photos than those of starving children being fed.
License and registration, he can sense your aggravation.
On the head of the fallen angel.
When the world is muttering under the floorboards, stomp even louder.
Time.
Let them know you are alive today.
Or unhum.
Did you know that your hands came with a ripple effect?
Whisper tones unraveling like silk.
Blood, sweat, and tears win by any means poetry.
Sway, look at me. Is a piece of the pie too good for me?
Some may call it rock the mic. We call it poetry.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Sojourn with Words. We're so very happy you decided to join us today. My name is Sistah Joy. I am your host, and I'm very honored to be presenting one of the foremost voices in the Washington metropolitan area, in the DMV, as it were. And I'm speaking of none other than Naomi Ayala. Now, today, as CTV presents once again premier poetry and premier poets, we know that we're going to learn about the poet, we're going to hear the fabulous poetry, and we're going to have some fun in the process. So first and foremost, again, welcome, Naomi.
Hi, Sistah Joy. Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody.
Absolutely. Now, before we ask Naomi to actually share poetry, which she will be doing later in our episode today, I'm going to share some information that I know about her, and then she'll also augment what has been shared, and we'll get into a bit of a more one-on-one conversation. Naomi Ayala is a poet, teacher, writer, and translator. She has published 3 books of poetry. Her most recent is Calling Home, Praise Songs and Incantations, Bilingual Press. She also authored This Side of Early and Wild Animals on the Moon. Now, she is a translator of, and I know I'm going to kill it before I even do this, but I'm going to give it a stab, and she can correct me as necessary, but she is also the translator of La Sombra de la Muerte, Death's Shadow, a novel by His Excellency Jose Tomas Perez, the Dominican Republic's ambassador to the United States, and Luis Alberto Ambrosio I stopped there. The English translation is The Wind's Archaeology. How am I doing, Naomi?
You're doing great.
Okay, I'll keep going. Now, Naomi has also translated and published poems by Lope de Vega, as well as the film script for the documentary, Every Child is Born a Poet, the life and work of Piri Thomas. She has been awarded various prizes and recognitions, including artist fellowships from the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, special recognition for community service from the United States Congress, and the Martin Luther King Jr. Legacy of Environmental Justice Award. How about that for stellar voice in the arts and in the community advocacy? Naomi, thank you for joining us here on Sojourn with Words. I know I killed some of those words that are not native to my tongue, but please feel free to correct anything that I
You did great. You did great.
Okay. Well, tell us, Naomi, what's been happening with you and what, as our viewers, many of whom, but not all, I'm sure, but many of whom are meeting you for the first time. Tell us about what's happening in your world right now with regard to literary matters.
Literary matters, huh?
Well, not
Only.
necessarily. We never know where the worlds diverge.
Right. I'm teasing. No, I finished a new book of poetry recently and have been shopping around for a publisher. And I've started another that includes a couple of the poems I'm going to share today, and kind of like zigs in and out of different points in time during the pandemic. There's so much to address, it's so overwhelming for everyone. And I'm not one of those poets who can just be really responsive or reactive when something that's important to me is going down. I usually just process. I need to sit on it and walk it off and process it. And so I've been doing that along, and now I'm about halfway through this new manuscript. I'm very excited to be able to give form. I see that my voice as a poet is also changing. The shape of the poems are different. They feel more like my earth.
Tell us about that. That's exciting.
It's a different energy. They have this different sense of urgency. It's like, from my very biased perspective, of course, they have like the sense of urgency now is like married to more of like an improvisational, I don't want to say style, but like the lines tumble over into one another in a more improvisational style, which was more like going back to my roots with writing in English, in the English language, and why that was such an important hook for me when I first started learning English, that improvisational edge where, you don't know, it's not necessarily linear. And I love that. I just haven't been able to do it consistently over time. Like I'll intend it, but it doesn't mean it's what comes out of me.
Right.
So yeah. So that's kind of like what's been going on with me, and becoming firmer about what I call the practice of returning. Showing up again and again and again.
Okay.
Regardless of what you find there and what you don't find that you want to find, and the frustration and the tiredness and all that. That practice of returning, like a devotion. The way some people go to church or go to temple, no matter what, you show up because, that's what you do on this day of worship and practice, and you show up.
Well, certainly the cultural aesthetic is strong in your writing. And as someone who speaks multiple languages and as a translator, there are nuances that are probably unique to different cultures. When it comes to, well, let's see, I did a little digging about Naomi Ayala.
Oh God.
No, this is good stuff.
I trust you. I know it's not going to be some weird drama.
No. Just because our paths don't cross on a regular basis.
This is true.
It behooves me to do a little bit. And I see that you do business as Inspired Means LLC. Is that still your business that you operate under, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily, but I've kept the name because I like it, and that's where I do my freelancing work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And also
I'm freelancing like translation, community outreach, all of these other things I do because it's been important for me to keep it separate because I do a lot of different things. And so people who want to see me or need to see me in terms of like this other work that I do know that I'm not being, like a poet or a creative writer right now, that's not the stuff. Yeah. It's been a healthy boundary.
Okay. And so with regard to, I see that you were, were you a participant or merely an attendant for Poets and Writers 2021 Gala?
I was, yeah, I spoke about Poets and Writers briefly. I did.
Can you tell us about Poets and Writers?
Poets and Writers is our trade magazine, and I've been a fan for many, many, many years. I love the interviews. The articles about craft are excellent, are quotables, and, I've incorporated them into my teaching. And when I'm teaching adult writers, I offer turn people to them. It's well written, it's well researched, and you get to hear from everyone across the board, from both beginning writers and, mature, more accomplished or differently accomplished writers. And so for me, they really take that, notion of democracy to that level. A lot of people say it, but they don't really actually practice it, and they do. I like what they do.
Right. Well, I recently subscribed, so I'm going to start looking for articles by you to see what is.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I catch up that way. But Poets and Writers is a publication that is well regarded in the literary circles. Certainly, I would say nationally.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are people outside of the country who read it as well. Let me give you a recent example.
Okay, yes.
In the pandemic, especially, when my issues would arrive, I would be like, thank God, Poets and Writers is still being published. I wonder what they're going to say. They were really, they remained real during this whole time. Well, there was an article, a short piece, I can't remember the woman's name now, who wrote, she was a young mom and wanted to write, and was a young mom and I believe a single mom, and wanted to keep her writing practice. She was also a freelance writer, so she was dealing, having to develop octopus hands to deal with all these things. And she started this group with friends writing, so they could write together in their isolation. And so I decided, I have a friend who's now back in Nigeria, but was living in California, that we would start doing this. We would start sharing writing time together, which is not the same thing as having a writing group and giving people feedback, but where we get on Zoom and we sit and we just have our time together. So she's had to go back home to take care of her mom in Nigeria. But my friend Celeste in Texas, I was talking to her about this and she said, well, let's you and I do it together. So now we've been doing this for 2 months, and this came directly out of me reading this article, and I had never tried this. And, I don't think I would have been so open to trying it in the past, and it's worked. And we say hello, and then we, sit down to write together, and we're just on Zoom. We can watch each other when we're like, have a lull in the writing, and it's been fabulous. So
wonderful.
Those are like really valuable ideas.
I love that. And that's what we want to make sure, that we express concepts that perhaps others may not have considered, on how to expand our writing community, how to connect our writing communities in a way that is so relevant and germane to everyday life. I mean, writing is not something that's so esoteric and so far removed from our lives that it's something that you can keep in a box and say, well, this is only for this time. We can have writing experiences that connect us on so many levels. So thank you for sharing that. And again, that publication is one that spawns many such unique experiences. Now, I also know that you there was something that you did with, and I'm going back a bit, a knit-a-thon, a knit-a-thon. That's not about writing, but you were doing something for expectant mothers at Mary Center. That I'm going back now to like 2019. So was that something that is?
Oh my goodness, you get around the community, don't you? Yes, this is this group, K2P2, Knit 2, Pearl 2, started by my friend Leslie Douglas. And I took it on and kept it going. And we did a kind of knit raiser instead of a fundraiser where we needed blankets and clothing and like little smocks and socks and booties for kids at Mary Center. And then, I know my aunt in Connecticut got into knitting, and I told her, okay, well, now you're going to have to make some stuff. And she made all these hats. And then a friend's mother in Virginia made all these blankets. She loves to make blankets and just went at it. So we had all of these great, warm winter gear to donate as a group. It was really great. It was fun.
Well, that's what I wanted people to see, that, we poets, we're multifaceted, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
We are part of the community at large. And there are things that are so meaningful to us, and they lend to our experience and our ability to write, because these are things that enrich our views and provide insights that we would not necessarily otherwise have. One more touch base, and that is National Association for Poetry Therapy. Talk to us about that organization, if you could, because that is something that's near and dear to my heart, because I believe in poetry, healing through poetry. So many, there's an organization I recently joined called the Inkwell, and we work particularly with children, but it's really an organization for all creative expression and healing through the arts. So when I saw National Association for Poetry Therapy, I'm like, okay, I need to learn about this. So this is a selfish inquiry here, but we want to share the news with our viewers as well. Talk to us about that organization.
Oh, thank you. I did a reading for them recently, probably last year, and it was during the pandemic. This will be our point of orientation to come. But yes, I did a reading for them last year. I believe, I think around the time I started seeing their certification program. So they work with therapists and social workers who also write poetry to provide therapy or all kinds of therapeutic methods that are anchored in poetry and the writing of poetry. My friend Marianela Medrano, who is one of the Dominican Republic's most beloved poets and lives in Connecticut, has been leading the organization. So I remember them. I'll have to check because I don't know for sure, but I think I remember them coming into being in either the late 80s or early 90s, offering the certificate program. And it was really interesting to me because it was something that I had not seen at the time, nor have I seen recently be available everywhere. And these are women and some men. I haven't met the men, but they are there. The women I've met, fully formed, incredibly capable professionals who also write poetry. And it adds, we've known this all along. We've known this for forever, but it kind of adds, I don't want to say the word legitimacy, even though it's what's coming to my mind, but like it adds the weight to it as a therapeutic method that it deserves, that this is not just some frou-frou, thing, go sit in a corner and write, but that it's an approach. It's a legitimate approach.
Okay. Well, now I do want to touch base on some of the points that you've indicated to be significant to you, and that is the practice of being present. Writing is that practice. Talk to us about some advice to writers. And I probably should have started here, but I just, there's so many things. We'll have to have you back. But with regard to the practice of writing and being present, what does that mean to you?
Well, for me, I'm a Buddhist, and I practice sitting meditation and walking meditation. And so I have that bias. But for me, about writing, and, I can say personally, and in what I've observed as a teacher for the past 40 years, is that when we're able to be as present as we try to be when we're for a loved one or for ourselves, and we should figure among the loved ones, to show up, to be present, to hear, see, smell, taste, touch, to be right here, right now, is the same act of sitting down to receive writing, And I think poetry is so different from all other types of writing in this way, though I have known novelists who would say the process of composition is the same for them. Where we have our intentions. We know what we want to do as poets when we sit down to write, intentionally, but we don't always get to control that. We don't get to control that word for word and line by line and stanza by stanza and say, you will be this, I command you. It is this process of being open and receiving and expecting. So we're almost like a reader, a receiver at the same time as we're the writer composing these words. And it's one of the most, magical, powerful things there is about poetry. And it's very humbling.
Okay.
So I believe that the more we are, like whatever it is that we need to do for ourselves, reach that state of presence, the better it's going to go. Revising that part of the brain, you could do that at any time. You can
before we go any further, because time is getting away, I definitely want to make sure that persons know how to reach you, because you are a teacher first and foremost. And please give us some contact information real quick so that we can have persons be in touch with Naomi Ayala, one of the great, as she said, 40 years, one of the great teachers, one of the great writers, one of the great minds that allows poetry and the arts to be vibrant and alive. Naomi, how can our viewers be in touch with you?
Thank you, Joy. I'm on Facebook. I have an author page on Facebook. I also post on my regular personal page. It's Naomi Ayala 7 across most social media. I try to be responsive to messages on Messenger. I can't always get to them, so please be patient if you reach out to me that way. I'm also on Instagram, and I'm new to TikTok, but I love TikTok. I think it's the best social media platform. It's awesome. And it's Naomi Ayala 7, like the numeral 7S.
Right. Okay. And your book, Calling Home, how can they get your book?
You can get it from Bookshop or Amazon if you prefer to do it that way, or you can order it directly from Bilingual Press, which is part of the University of Arizona Press.
Okay. Well, Naomi, thank you so much for sharing about you as a writer, about you as the individual who is connected to community, who has such a strong view and experience to share. We want our viewers to know that you are available, and hopefully they will reach out to you through your social media information. But we want to thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And now we want to hear some poetry by Naomi Ayala. Thank you, viewers, for joining us. I guarantee you, you're in for a treat right now. Naomi, the floor is yours.
This is called New Year's Eve 2020. And there are two words in Japanese. The first one, konnichiwa, is hello. And the second one, arigato, is thank you. New Year's Eve 2020. At home, I unbagged dinner to find a live orchid, almost the size of my fist. I eat the raw fish around it between two tears. The woman who minds the busy storefront old as me, konnichiwa, a smile lifting her mask to the bridge of her nose. The young man at the register, arigato, I say, arigato, and he bows. I walk off into the pandemic streets with my brown bag, go-go blaring in Freedom Plaza, a single colorless boom at 11, unlike any other year. Thank you. And this is called Crow on the Train. There are seals down here, like final expiry dates, budget caps, the way the wind rolls out on certain policed grays, and I rise up out of nowhere, figuring, and abandoning figuring. Certain grays and certain men in blue pushing wheeled garbage bins with hunting yellow scarves tied to the handles like tiny flags on a balsa at sea. Not police, not this time, invisible. This is a sea, winded sea of the invisible, city of the sea of certain blatant knowings. Look down on us, Crow, bid us into the nighttime of our souls with your keen eye. Take off the roof of the world. This is called Stay-at-Home Order, April 2020. This was our first day at home order here in DC. Not even a trail of crumbs for Crow in the numbing streets of fucked city. But things are done and things are being made. Your piece of what got is real, what could have been great. And when you have an extra that's not enough, count your rows. Pray, pray, Crow. Everyone who can is imbibing. So send your prayers and offer up something. Who feeds the raven? God asked Job. It was a bad rhetorical question. Who feeds the two world walkers? We are here. We don't know anything. I am going to close with this poem called Malcolm X Park. Some people know this as Meridian Hill Park, and some of us prefer to call this Malcolm X Park. And it's one of my favorite parks in DC. It's just 2 blocks away from me. So I have gone there a lot over the years, continue almost every other day. And the reference here to the drummers, we've had the Malcolm X drummers play drums on Sundays, a sight to be seen and to be heard. On cooler days, the sounds drift from 16th Street all the way to Ontario Road when I go watch them and listen to them in person, but you can hear the drums out here. And it's one of the things that most connects me to my roots in DC. Malcolm X Park. Go round and round the green rectangle, sacred labyrinth, winter, summer, fall. On Sundays, from tribal goatskin, drum beats rise to the jet fuel ribbons across the paling sky. Joan of Arc on her tiny horse as if to leap the quadrant and land on the US Capitol. Unaware of the century we inhabit like mold from the trees, a black-tipped pair of high tops hangs like bed balls. The dogs obey their leashes. An old woman licks an orange half hollowed out by despair. And so near now, the stars, benches emptying like pews at All Souls Church, the Euclid stoplight reddening, the sky masking all of the world's emptying.
Thank you, Naomi. Oh my goodness. I love Malcolm X Park as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that closes out another fabulous episode of Sojourn with Words. Thank you for being with us. I'm your host, Sistah Joy. Thank you, Naomi Ayala, for your beautiful poetry. See you next time, right here on CTV on Sojourn with Words. Remember, keep writing.